Hey, how's it going? I'm Mike Morgan. I'd like to share a quick message with you, something I've entitled Stop Looking Back. I'm going to go ahead and give you a forewarning. My ADD kicks in. I tend to talk with my hands. I sway a little bit. I pace every now and then. Also, I'm using my phone and a notebook to bring this message to you. Hopefully, these are things that are not going to drive you completely insane while watching this video. However, if it does drive you crazy, try to stick with me until the end of the video. I'm hoping that this corporate message will bring something home to you as an individual, and something that you may be able to apply to what you're experiencing now in this season of your life, or something you've experienced in the past. And before we get started, I would like to share a quick overview of a time in history. If you're a history buff, you may know this story. If not, that's fine too. We all learn something new every day. In 1519, Spanish conquistador Hernando Cortez landed in Mexico on the shores of the Yucatan with only one objective: seize the great treasure known to be there, hoarded by the Aztecs. Cortez was committed to his mission, and his quest for riches is legendary. Cortez was an excellent motivator. He convinced more than 500 soldiers and 100 sailors to set sail from Spain to Mexico, commanding only 11 ships to take the world's richest treasure. The historic question becomes how a small band of Spanish soldiers arrived in a strange country and swiftly brought about the overthrow of a large and powerful empire that was in power for over 6 centuries. That's over 600 years that the Aztecs were in power. For Cortez, the answer was easy. It was all or nothing, a complete and total commitment. And here's how Cortez got the buy-in from the rest of his men. He took away the option of failure. It was conquer and be heroes and enjoy the spoils of victory, or die trying. When Cortez and his men arrived on the shores of the Yucatan, he rallied the men for one final pep talk before leading his men into battle, and uttered these 3 words that changed the course of history: burn the ships. He was met with resistance from his men. Burn the ships, he repeated. He then uttered these words: if we're going home in their ships. With that, Cortez and his men burned their own ships, and by burning their own ships, the commitment level of the men was raised to a whole new level, a level much higher than any of the men, including Cortez, could have ever imagined. Burn the ships. Cortez took away the option of failure, the option of defeat. There was no escape route. Personally, if my captain ever told me, burn the ships, Captain said, what? If things go south, there's no escape. You're basically committing suicide. But Cortez knew that by burning his own ships, that it would raise that motivation. If he took away the option of failure, if he took away the option of escape and falling back and retreating, that his men would fight harder. And they did, and they won. The next thing I want you to look at is Genesis chapter 19, verses 15 through 26. This is going to be from the Message translation. There are a lot of churches out there that will only read from the King James Version, and there's nothing wrong with that. The King James Version is very accurate. It's one of the oldest translations. However, it can be a little hard to navigate through scriptures with all the these and the thous and all that good stuff. The Message translation is a different translation that just makes it easier for readers to read through, understand. Personally, I recommend cross-referencing scriptures to make sure that you're fully understanding what's going on. However, let's go ahead and get into it. Again, that's Genesis chapter 19, starting at verse 15, and we'll end in verse 26. At the break of day, the angels pushed Lot to get going. Hurry, get your wife and 2 daughters out of here before it's too late and you're caught in the punishment of the city. Lot was dragging his feet. The men grabbed Lot's arms and the arms of his wife and daughters. God was so merciful to them. And dragged them to safety outside the city. When they had them outside, Lot was told, "Now run for your life. Don't look back. Don't stop anywhere on the plain. Run for the hills or you'll be swept away." There's 3 things in that verse that I want you to keep in the back of your mind. 3 things that they put emphasis on was don't stop, don't look back, and don't get swept away. But Lot protested. "No, masters, you can't mean it. I know that you've taken a liking to me, and you have done me an immense favor in saving my life, but I can't run for the mountains. Who knows what terrible things might happen to me in the mountains and leave me for dead? Look over there. That town is close enough to get to. It's a small town, hardly anything to it. Let me escape there and save my life. It's a mere wide place in the road." The angels replied, "All right, Lot. If you insist, I'll let you have your way. And I won't stamp out that town you've spotted, but hurry up. Run for it. I can't do anything until you get there." That's why the town was called Zoar. That is, meaning small town. The sun was high in the sky when Lot arrived at Zoar. Then God rained brimstone and fire down on Sodom and Gomorrah, a river of lava from God out of the sky, and destroyed these cities and the entire plain, and everyone who lived in the cities, and everything that grew from the ground. But Lot's wife looked back and turned to a pillar of salt. "What are you doing?" They had just been told not to look back, but she did so anyway. Don't look back. That's not the direction that you were told to go. Don't look back. Now, I want to stress to you that if you're watching this video, and even for those that are not watching this video, you have a specific calling and a specific purpose for your life. We all have the great commission, but we all have our individual missions that God has given us. You're not worthless. You're not a mistake. You're not an accident. You are actually worth a great deal. Many of you have been told the opposite. And we need what you can bring to the table, because what you can do, I may not be able to do. What I can do, you may not be able to do. And I'll go as far enough to say that the Church of Christ is better because you're in it. Now, I'm trying to pump you full of life and full of encouragement, because we spend so much other time being out in the world and just being fed this garbage that we're insignificant and that we have no purpose and no calling and just live by the day. But I want you to know that you do have a purpose and you do have a calling on your life. And you can do great things for Christ if you follow that purpose. If you do what God has created you to do, then you'll change your world, and you'll change the world of the people around you. Now, there's one thing I want you to think about. When Cortez and his men were going from Spain to Mexico, keep in mind this was not like today's kind of boat ride. This was not a quick journey. I imagine it took them months to get from Spain to Mexico. I also imagine what was on their mind during this whole journey. It was likely the 600 years of failure. Can you imagine sitting on a ship trying to go to a country where this this these people have been in power for over 600 years? I can imagine, somebody saying, "Do you remember when my grandpa came back? He was so bloody. A lot of people died. How are we ever going to defeat something if so many other people have failed?" And a lot of us suffer today from what I like to call generational failure. You see your dad or your mom or your grandpa or your grandma or siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles. They've all struggled from something in the same aspect. None of them's been able to defeat it. None of them's been able to break the chain. And you're thinking the same thing, that if they can't beat this, then neither can I. And the devil will come and whisper in your ear, and he'll tell you, you're not even stronger than your dad, and he's not beating this. You're not stronger than your grandpa was, and he didn't beat this. There's many of us that may have grown up with an alcoholic dad or a family member that struggles with drug addiction, and we're afraid we're going to turn out just like them. And the devil will come and he'll whisper in your ear that you're weak and you're powerless and you're not going to overcome something because of that generational failure that you've seen that has become a pattern in your life. These historical family ships that need to be burned. And when the devil comes to you and tells you these things, you need to have a spirit of a fighter to rise up in you. And you need to respond with, yes, I am weak. Yes, I am powerless. But I serve a mighty God. And we also see in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 29, where it says that he gives strength to the weak and power to the powerless. Since when did we lose the fight for our destiny? It's our destiny. There's something that you really need to understand, is that if you hold on to your history, you do so at the expense of your destiny. You have to let go of your history and grab onto your destiny. Don't let the failure from your past make you fearful of the future. And everybody talks about, the good old days. The truth is, they weren't that great, and you know it. Quit lying to yourself. Now, for a lot of people, when we look back, all we see is regret. And you know what regret is? Regret is failed opportunities and missed chances. And the past, they may have been good days, they may have been bad days, but they're past days. Those days are gone. You can't go back, you can't change it. There's nothing you can do. They may have been good, they may have been bad, but they're past days. They're behind you, and that's where they need to stay. The best days are ahead of you. They're not right now, they're not in the past, but they're ahead of you. And you may be thinking to yourself, how are you telling me that the best days are ahead of me when you don't know my past? Let me explain this to you. God always eclipses himself. You may not see it in the beginning, but he will always eclipse himself. If someone was to walk up to God and say, you know what, God, what is your plans for Mike in 2014? Do you really think that God is going to reply with, you know what I would like to do? I would like to do a lot less in Mike's life this year than I did last year, or the year before that, or the year before that. You get where I'm going with that. God will always eclipse himself. The best days are ahead of you. not behind you, but ahead. You know, when I was a teenager, my parents always made me cut the grass. Always. And it didn't bother me so much, but when I was cutting the grass, I felt like I looked ridiculous. I would have my shorts on because it was too hot to be wearing pants. But if I did that, then while I was cutting the grass, stuff stuck to my legs, stuff shot out, hit my legs, and it stung. So I would wear these knee-high socks. I was losing cool points with every step I took. I looked a lot like my grandpa, and that was when he wasn't cutting grass. But I would be cutting the grass, and it would be looking really good. I'd keep everything lined up, kept everything looking nice and tight. It was almost like looking at a freshly cut football field, how it has the lines in it. I was very prideful of that. But you know what? As I was cutting the grass, I was looking down, making sure that I was on my mark. And I'd see something on the ground, and I'd turn, and I'd look at it. And the moment I turned back, I'd be all over the flipping yard. Why is my life so off track? It's because many of us keep doing this. We keep looking back. Now, the next passage that I want you to take a look at with me is going to be Isaiah chapter 43, verse 16 through 20. Again, this is from the Message translation. That is what God says. The God who builds a road right through the ocean, who carves a path through the pounding waves. The God who summons horses and chariots and armies. They lie down and then can't get up. They're snuffed out like so many candles. Forget what's happened. Don't keep going over old history. Be alert. Be present. I'm about to do something brand new. I'm bursting out. Don't you see it? There it is. I'm making a road through the desert, rivers in the Badlands. Forget about what's behind you. Don't let those failures from your past make you fearful of your future. Don't hold on to your past so much that it negates your future. The next passage I would like you to look at is Hebrews 11, chapter 11, verse 8. This is from the New Living Translation. And it says, by faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should later receive for his inheritance, obeyed, and he went out, not knowing where he was going. Many of you know the story of Abraham, and if you don't, then Abraham was called by God to create a nation of his descendants. And this passage says that Abraham went out without knowing where he was going. You know, God didn't draw him a map and say, I want you here. Furthermore, God didn't say, you go or I'll kill you. No, Abraham didn't have to go. Many of us, we don't know where God's calling us to go. But you go out of faith. Just like Abraham. Abraham went out of faith. And he went without knowing where he was going. And he allowed God to be his guide. And later we see Abraham's descendants forming what we now know to be Israel. But that was many, many, many generations later. Now, I'm not going to tell you that being a Christian is easy. I'll never be that person to tell you that serving God, that following God, that pursuing your calling over your life is easy. However, I will tell you that it's worth it. And I imagine if we could go back and we could talk to some of those very known figures in the Bible and ask them, was it worth it? I believe every single one of them would say, oh yeah, it was worth it. There was times I didn't know what was going on. There was times I wondered if we were going to make it, but I wouldn't change a single thing about it. Following God will always be worth it. Why are some people afraid to follow the calling of God over their lives and fulfill that purpose that God has given them? The fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, and the fear of letting go. The fear of the unknown is very self-explanatory. You're fearing what you don't know. However, the fear of failure is fearing what you do know and fearing that you're not going to measure up. However, also the fear of missing out basically boils down to the fear of letting go. You have to burn the ships. You have to get rid of some of those bad relationships. You have to get rid of that addiction that's got a hold on your life. You got to get rid of that negative thinking. And do your best to get rid of the fear that's got you paralyzed and is keeping you from moving forward, from burning your ships, moving forward, and taking control of your destiny. Fear is not your friend when it comes to the calling of God over your life. It can paralyze you and keep you from moving forward and finding that calling and finding that purpose and being able to fully feel like you're doing something with your life and make you feel like there is meaning. And I'm not going to lie and say that you can't find happiness out in the world, and that you can't find happiness in some of the bad things that you may do. Whoever tells you that sinning isn't fun, that is the biggest lie ever. Sin is fun. And the devil knows that, and that's why he tempts us with sin. However, I can tell you from experience that those sins that you find so fun, so pleasurable, and you think that it gives you a sense of happiness and belonging and purpose, if found in the world, that is a false sense of happiness and purpose and fulfillment in your life. For years, I ran from God. I ran from my calling. I ran from ministry. I did my own thing. Went and joined the military. Went out, just had the time of my life, to be honest with you. But I quickly realized that I wasn't in those moments. I was happy, or I thought I was, but it was a false sense of happiness. Lastly, well, second to last, how do you burn the ships? Many of you are thinking, you're telling me to burn the ships and to quit looking back, but you're not telling me how. Well, first, you have to make the choice. You have to say, look, I'm burning these ships. Secondly, you have to tell the crew, tell the people around you, look, I'm getting this out of my life. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I'm burning it. It's out of my life. These people can be accountability partners for you. And when they see you coming up and trying to throw water on it after you've already set it ablaze, they're like, no, don't do that. Reminds me of a song by Usher. I don't know why that popped in my head. ADD. Let it burn. But tell the crew, Tell people who can help keep you accountable and help push you to be better and find your purpose and your calling in life. Like the match. You have to not only talk about burning your ship. It would have been one thing for Cortez to say, around a campfire one night, you know what we should do? We should burn our ships and raise the commitment level. Take away that option of failure and defeat and escape. He didn't say we should. No. He said burn the ships. He made that commitment. He made his men burn the ships. He put action behind his words. So you have to light the match and get it going. Get those babies going. Lastly, once you get those babies burning, don't extinguish them. For some of you, you may struggle with partying, and there's going to be a lot of nights where Netflix is going to be your best friend on the weekends. But that's okay. Some of you, you need to burn those relationships. Even if that means getting rid of that late night, 11 o'clock phone call that you're getting from your significant other or somebody you're wanting to be your significant other. Pornography. Get the computer out of your room and put it in a public place, if that's something that you're struggling with. There are many ways to burn your ships, but like I said, first you have to make the choice, then you have to tell the crew, then you have to light the match, and then you just have to let them burn. Don't extinguish them. There's one last thing that I want to go over with you really quickly, and then I'll let you go. Hopefully all this talking with my hands hasn't drove you crazy. Now, if you know anything about the Bible, even if you don't know much, there's a lot of people who still know the story of Moses and how Moses was sent by God to deliver God's chosen people, the Israelites, out of bondage, slavery, and captivity from the Egyptians. And we see during this time, Moses, with God, he parts the Red Seas. And that allowed Moses and the Israelites to cross over the Red Sea on dry ground and get to the other side. Now, during this time, the Pharaoh and his army were telling in on the Israelites. And as soon as Moses and his people got to the other side, and the Egyptians were right behind them, in the middle of where God had parted the Red Sea, God allowed the water to go back to normal. He closed the gap. And there's two things that happened when God did that. One, what was chasing them was destroyed. Also, it closed the way for the Israelites to go back. And if you continue reading in the book of Exodus, you'll see that the Israelites actually wanted to go back into slavery. As they were wandering through the wilderness, they complained and said, why would you take us out of Egypt just to have us die in the wilderness? And the reason they were having such a difficult time was because they continued to disobey God. However, it closed the way for them to go back. Lastly, for real this time, the final thing I want to reiterate to you is that you need to burn the ships. Make a complete and total commitment to change your life. to get rid of things that you'll have as an escape route, things that are bringing you down. You need to quit looking back. Don't let the failure of the past keep you from going forward in your life. And the best days, and this is a big one, the best days are not behind you. The best days are not right now. But the best days, if you're going to follow God and pursue that calling and that purpose over your life, the best days are actually ahead of you. I hope that you took something from this corporate message and you can apply it to your life. Thank you, and God bless.